The Brown family's two-story house in a beautiful suburban neighborhood of Richmond symbolized a perfect family from the outside. With its red brick exterior, white window frames, well-maintained lawn, and colorful flower beds, neighbors considered it a picture-perfect home in every season. Elizabeth Brown sighed deeply as she looked at the high school student files spread across the kitchen island counter. A woman of delicate beauty and gentleness, she had worked as a counselor at Albert High School for over 10 years and earned tremendous trust from her students. "Stop bringing students' casework home," Richard Brown's low, grave voice interrupted her thoughts. Richard was a leading real estate developer in the area, respected in the community for his career and charisma. Standing over 6 feet tall, his presence stood out in any room. He wore expensive suits with ease and exuded the confidence of a successful man. "I'm just preparing for tomorrow's meetings," Elizabeth answered with a smile. "I'll put them away soon." Richard leaned against the kitchen counter, holding a glass of whiskey. "You're too kind. You sacrifice too much of your time for those troubled kids." Elizabeth said nothing. Richard never tried to understand why she cared so deeply for the students he called troubled.
Can you imagine making $10,000 a month just from YouTube, all from home? That's exactly what I did with Reddit Stories. No face, no voice. Check the link in the description if you're curious.
"Where's Olivia?" Richard asked. "In her room. I think she's doing homework." Richard frowned. "Shut away again. She's been acting strange lately. Go check her room." Elizabeth frowned. "She might be busy right now. And she's a 15-year-old girl. She needs privacy too." "There's no privacy in this house," Richard's voice was cold, leaving no room for discussion. "Go check on her." Elizabeth nodded silently, putting away her papers and choosing to obey to avoid an argument with her husband. She had long believed that maintaining peace in the home was her responsibility. Olivia's door was closed. Elizabeth knocked gently. "Olivia? May I come in?" When there was no response, she opened the door quietly. In the dimly lit room, Olivia was lying on her bed. Wearing a plain, simple t-shirt and sweatpants, she was looking at her smartphone but immediately darkened the screen when her mother entered. "Are you okay?" Elizabeth asked worriedly. Instead of answering, Olivia curled up. Her long brown hair covered her face, hiding her expression. "My stomach hurts." Elizabeth sat on the edge of her daughter's bed. "Again? That's the third day. Do you have a fever?" She reached out to touch Olivia's forehead, but her daughter pulled away. "No fever. I just don't feel well." "What about food? Do you want to eat something? I could heat up some soup." Olivia shook her head slightly. "Not hungry." Elizabeth looked around the room. The walls that were once decorated with bright colors and photos of friends were now bare. Her once cheerful and outgoing daughter had changed into someone else entirely in recent months. Her grades had dropped, she no longer spent time with friends, and she stayed shut in her room at home. "How was your English test last week?" "Got a C," Olivia answered vaguely. "A C? You always got A's in English. What happened?" "Don't know. Just couldn't concentrate." Elizabeth felt Olivia's body tense as Richard's footsteps echoed in the hallway. He stood in the doorway with his arms crossed. "Saying she's sick again." Irritation seeped into his voice. Elizabeth looked up at Richard. "Her stomach hurts. It's been going on for days now." "Teenage make-believe," Richard said callously. "She just wants attention. Don't use illness as an excuse for your falling grades." "Richard, she really..." "Enough," he cut off his wife's words. "Don't coddle her. When I was her age, I didn't miss school even when I had a fever. Teach her toughness." Olivia remained silent, facing the wall. Elizabeth placed her hand on her daughter's shoulder, but Olivia didn't move. "You're going to school tomorrow." Understood. Richard commanded. Olivia just nodded slightly. After Richard left the room, Elizabeth gently stroked her daughter's hair. If you're really worried, I can take you to the doctor. Dad won't allow it, Olivia's voice trembled. Then. Elizabeth searched for words. We could go secretly. Olivia finally looked at her mother. Her eyes were empty, their former sparkle gone. It's okay. It's just a stomachache. Deep down, Elizabeth felt this wasn't just a stomachache. It was something in her daughter's eyes, an unspeakable sadness and fear. But she couldn't see the cause. You can tell me anything, Elizabeth whispered. There's nothing to tell, Olivia turned away. Leave me alone. Elizabeth left the room with heavy steps. Downstairs, Richard had turned on the television and started watching the news. He had entered Olivia's life 5 years ago when she was only 10. After Elizabeth's former husband Daniel died in a car accident, Richard offered them stability and protection. 2 years later, he formally adopted Olivia, becoming her legal father. The relationship had been good at the beginning. But something began to change. It started with small changes: Olivia's rebellious attitude, Richard's increasing strictness. Elizabeth thought it was just a rite of passage through adolescence. But now, her intuition told her something more serious was lurking beneath the surface. When she entered the living room, Richard gave her a cold look. Don't take her to any doctor. It's a waste of money. Don't use insurance for such make-believe illnesses. Elizabeth nodded quietly. The next morning, Elizabeth watched from the living room window as Olivia boarded the school bus. Her shoulders were slumped, and fatigue emanated from her entire body. She hadn't eaten breakfast, and her face remained pale. I wonder if forcing her to go to school was really the right thing to do, Elizabeth muttered to herself. Of course it was, Richard said, appearing behind her. Already dressed in his business suit, he was ready to leave for work. If you coddle her, she'll always remain weak. Toughness requires strictness. Elizabeth nodded silently. She knew that questioning her husband's disciplinary philosophy would lead to a lengthy argument. Richard was about to leave for a 3-day business trip, so at least the house would be quiet during that time. Keep a close eye on Olivia while I'm gone. Always know what she's doing, Richard emphasized before leaving. Don't forget to check her phone. Elizabeth felt a slight disgust but answered, yes, I understand. She had always felt uncomfortable with Richard interfering with Olivia's privacy, but she had partly gone along with it under the pretext of parental responsibility. After Richard left, Elizabeth headed to her workplace, Albert High School. Waiting for her in the counseling office was her colleague and close friend, Sarah Martinez. Elizabeth, you look terrible, Sarah said worriedly. Another all-nighter with casework. Elizabeth managed a tired smile. No, I'm worried about Olivia. They moved to the back of the office where other staff couldn't hear them. Elizabeth confided in Sarah about Olivia's behavior over the past few months, declining grades, thinning friendships, and especially the concerning recurring illnesses. Richard says it's just make-believe. He won't even let me take her to a doctor. Sarah's expression darkened. What? That's strange. It's about her health. He calls it a waste of money. But I think Olivia is really sick. Nausea, stomach pain, loss of appetite, and more than anything, there's no light in her eyes. Sarah took Elizabeth's hands. Listen, Elizabeth. You've helped hundreds of children as a counselor. But it's strange that you can't help your own daughter now. A child's health comes first. You should act on your own judgment. Tears welled up in Elizabeth's eyes. Sarah's words expressed the voice deep within her own heart. Without Richard's permission. Elizabeth, Sarah said with a serious expression. Richard's away on a business trip, right? That's your best chance. Take Olivia to the hospital. As a mother, That's your right and duty. That afternoon, Elizabeth called Olivia's school and had her dismissed early, citing illness. Mom? What's going on? Olivia looked surprised to see Elizabeth waiting at the school's main entrance. We're going to the doctor, Elizabeth said with determination. Olivia anxiously looked around. But Dad. Dad's on a business trip. And your health comes first. Something flickered in Olivia's eyes for a moment, but quickly disappeared. She nodded silently and got into her mother's car. Elizabeth drove not to the local hospital but to St. Joseph Medical Center in the next town. She wanted to avoid the risk of being seen by Richard's acquaintances. Her hands trembled slightly as she presented her insurance card at the reception. Miss Brown, what are your symptoms? Dr. Nancy Chen, a young female physician, asked Olivia kindly. Olivia looked at her mother. Mom. I'd like to talk to the doctor alone. Elizabeth flinched momentarily. Pain that her daughter was trying to exclude her and anxiety that there was something she couldn't say squeezed her heart. However, she understood the importance of respecting her daughter's wishes. Of course, Elizabeth smiled. I'll wait outside. Alone in the waiting room, Elizabeth couldn't calm her racing heart. Various possibilities crossed her mind about what Olivia might be telling the doctor and why she couldn't speak in front of her mother. Drugs? Alcohol? Or, she tried to push away the frightening possibilities that came to mind. 45 minutes later, the examination room door opened. Dr. Nancy's expression was stern, and Olivia's eyes were red as if she had been crying. Mrs. Brown, Dr. Nancy addressed Elizabeth. I need to speak with you. Your daughter needs some tests. I'd like to conduct several tests today, if that's all right with you. Elizabeth couldn't hide her distress. Tests? What kind of tests? Blood tests and... The doctor paused a moment as if choosing her words. An ultrasound. Ultrasound? An ominous feeling spread through Elizabeth's chest. Is it something serious? Dr. Nancy maintained her professional expression. I can't say anything until we see the test results. We'll have the results by tomorrow. Could you come back tomorrow evening? Elizabeth looked at Olivia. Her daughter was staring at the floor, silently crying. Of course, Elizabeth answered. Whatever my daughter needs. A heavy silence hung between them in the car on the way home after the tests. Elizabeth tried to speak several times but couldn't find the words. Mom, Olivia suddenly spoke. Her voice was trembling. I'm scared. Elizabeth pulled the car to the shoulder for a moment. Then she hugged her daughter tightly. It's all right, Olivia. Whatever happens, I'm here for you. We'll get through this together. Olivia sobbed in her mother's arms. As Elizabeth rubbed her daughter's back, she mentally prepared herself for whatever truth would be revealed tomorrow. She was determined to be strong for her daughter, no matter how painful the truth might be. When they returned home, Olivia immediately shut herself in her room. As Elizabeth prepared dinner, she thought about how they needed to go to the hospital and return before Richard came back tomorrow. The next afternoon, Elizabeth ended her last counseling session at Albert High School. The clock showed 3:45. Richard will call at 5. I need to be back from the hospital and at home with Olivia by then, she thought anxiously as she grabbed her bag. Elizabeth, Sarah stopped her. Are you okay? Elizabeth exhaled shallowly. I don't know. But we're about to find out the truth. Whatever happens, I'm here for you, Sarah embraced her shoulder. Call if you need anything. I'll come right away. Elizabeth nodded gratefully. Then she hurried to the parking lot. At the school's main entrance, she saw Olivia already waiting. She looked even paler than yesterday, her shoulders slumped. Once in the car, Olivia stared silently out the window. Elizabeth wanted to say something but couldn't find the right words. Instead, She quietly started the car. When they arrived at the St. Joseph Medical Center parking lot, Elizabeth could hear Olivia's breathing grow ragged. She parked the car and turned off the engine. But neither of them moved to get out. "Olivia," Elizabeth turned quietly toward her daughter. "I don't know what's happening. But I promise you one thing. No matter what, I love you and I'll protect you. We'll get through this together." Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. Instead, she just nodded slightly. Inside the hospital was bright white, with the smell of disinfectant in the air. After checking in, they were escorted to Dr. Nancy Chen's office. The doctor stood up with a serious expression when she saw them. "Mrs. Brown, Mississippi. Please sit down," she indicated chairs on the other side of her desk. A strange tension hung in the examination room. Dr. Nancy stared at her computer screen in silence for a few seconds. Then, after taking a deep breath, she turned to Olivia and Elizabeth. "The test results are in," Dr. Nancy said quietly. Her voice had the typical calmness of a physician, but clear concern showed in her eyes. After looking at Olivia's blood tests and ultrasound results together, she hesitated for a moment. "In your stomach." Elizabeth's heart began to race. Time seemed to stop. "Olivia is pregnant. About 12 weeks along." The sound of blood rushing roared in Elizabeth's ears. A cry escaped her lips, seeming to come from so far away she barely recognized it herself. "No. That's..." She couldn't find words. Olivia covered her face with both hands, bent forward, and broke down crying. Elizabeth automatically put her arms around her daughter, but she herself was trembling. "I understand how you feel," Dr. Nancy said quietly. "This is an extremely difficult situation. Olivia is only 15. In Elizabeth's mind, countless questions whirled. How? When? And the most terrifying question, who? Who? Elizabeth forced out from the back of her throat. "Who did this to you?" Olivia couldn't answer, just kept crying. Dr. Nancy stood up and said quietly, "Let's talk in another room. A nurse will stay with Olivia." Elizabeth nodded vaguely. Though she didn't want to leave Olivia, she understood the need to calm down. A nurse entered the examination room and gently placed her hand on Olivia's shoulder. Elizabeth stood up weakly and followed Dr. Nancy. Entering a small consultation room, the doctor closed the door and faced Elizabeth. "First, take a deep breath," she said quietly. Elizabeth did as told, inhaling a shaky breath. "In situations like this, there are various options," Dr. Nancy continued. "There's still time, but whatever choice you make, Olivia's mental care takes priority." Elizabeth finally found her voice. "I don't understand. She hardly goes out. She didn't have a boyfriend. Just back and forth between school and home." "Mrs. Brown," Dr. Nancy's voice softened. "In my conversation with Olivia, a very concerning situation has come to light. I've called in a social worker. She needs to talk with Olivia in more detail." Elizabeth's blood ran cold. A social worker? Why? Olivia's situation. The doctor seemed to be choosing her words. "May involve legal issues." Legal. Elizabeth repeated the word. And suddenly, a horrifying possibility arose in her mind. Was Olivia raped? Her voice trembled. Dr. Nancy didn't answer directly. "Social worker Tracy Williams has arrived. After she speaks with Olivia, we'll talk, the three of us." Elizabeth was left in the consultation room with trembling legs. 10 minutes felt like an hour. In her mind, various terrifying possibilities appeared and disappeared. Thinking about the fear and loneliness Olivia might have experienced was heartbreaking. The door was knocked on, and a woman entered. She introduced herself with a calm expression. Mrs. Brown, I'm Tracy Williams. I'm a social worker with Child Protective Services. Olivia? Elizabeth asked with a trembling voice. She's with Dr. Nancy. She's safe. Tracy encouraged her to sit down. Mrs. Brown, what I'm about to tell you is very difficult. You'll need your strength. Elizabeth nodded firmly. I spoke with Olivia. At first, she didn't want to talk. But I explained that we needed to know the truth for her safety and to provide appropriate support, Tracy said quietly. Olivia says she has been sexually abused for about a year. For a year. Elizabeth's expression showed disbelief. By whom? A teacher? A coach? Tracy exhaled deeply. Your husband, Richard Brown. Elizabeth's world collapsed. She shook her head violently. No. That's a lie. Richard is her father. He even adopted her. He wouldn't do such a thing. Mrs. Brown, Tracy said quietly but firmly. In our experience, it's very rare for children to lie about such serious allegations. Especially when they can provide detailed explanations. But Elizabeth's voice was hoarse. Why didn't Olivia tell me? Olivia did tell us. She was afraid of hurting you. She said Richard threatened that if she spoke, it would hurt her mother, and that no one would believe her. Tracy's voice was gentle. Furthermore, she herself didn't want to break the family. Intense pain shot through Elizabeth's chest. Guilt for failing to protect her daughter and anger toward her husband overwhelmed her. Her body was shaking uncontrollably. We need to report this to the police now, Tracy said. Ensuring Olivia's safety is the top priority. Richard is on a business trip. He's coming back tomorrow, Elizabeth answered mechanically. That's good, Tracy said. You and Olivia need to move to a safe place. Do you have relatives or trusted friends you could stay with? Sarah's face appeared in Elizabeth's mind. Yes, I do. Excellent, Tracy smiled gently. A police officer will record statements from you and Olivia. After that, you'll move to a safe location. Meanwhile, an arrest warrant for Richard will be issued. Though Elizabeth's mind was in chaos, one thing was clear. She had to protect Olivia. Now that she knew her husband's true nature, all her maternal instincts had awakened to protect her daughter. Let me see Olivia, she stood up. Tracy opened the door and escorted Elizabeth to Dr. Nancy's examination room. Olivia sat in a chair, her eyes red and swollen. When Elizabeth entered, Olivia shrank back fearfully. Olivia. Elizabeth said with a trembling voice. I'm sorry. Mom couldn't protect you. Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes again. I wanted to tell you, but I was scared. Elizabeth rushed over and hugged her daughter tightly. They cried in each other's arms. For a long time, no words were necessary. That embrace contained all their love, apologies, and understanding. It's going to be okay now, Elizabeth whispered as she stroked her daughter's hair. I won't let anyone hurt you anymore. Mom will definitely protect you. Elizabeth woke up in the guest room of Sarah's house. For a moment, she didn't know where she was, but seeing Olivia sleeping beside her, she remembered yesterday's events were real. She quietly got up and looked around the room where morning sunlight streamed through the window. The hours at the police station had been like a nightmare. Olivia's testimony was recorded, and Elizabeth herself kept answering questions. About the details of life with Richard, changes in Olivia's behavior, and the signs she had missed, or refused to notice. I should have seen it, Elizabeth whispered to herself. Why didn't I notice? Don't blame yourself. Turning around, she saw Sarah standing in the doorway. She approached with 2 coffee cups. Thanks for being up so early, Elizabeth said as she accepted a cup. Did you sleep? Sarah asked gently. Elizabeth shook her head. Just fragments. But Olivia seemed exhausted. She's sleeping soundly. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed. The police called. Richard was arrested in Chicago, where he was on his business trip, this morning. Elizabeth took a deep breath. I'll tell Olivia later. She still needs rest. Sarah's expression clouded. There's one more thing. When the police searched Richard's belongings, they found inappropriate photos of Olivia on his mobile phone. The blood drained from Elizabeth's face. Her hands shook, nearly dropping the coffee cup. Those photos, when were they taken? The police didn't give details, but apparently they span quite a long period, Sarah answered quietly. A long silence followed. In Elizabeth's heart, a flame of anger was growing. Her affection for Richard had transformed into guilt for not protecting her daughter and intense hatred toward him. Why didn't I notice? Elizabeth asked herself again. I'm a counselor. I deal with children's problems every day. Families of victims often don't notice until the end, Sarah answered. Especially when the perpetrator is respected and trusted. Richard was a role model in the community. No one suspected. That afternoon, Detective Carter visited Sarah's house. A middle-aged black man with a calm but firm demeanor. Mrs. Brown, he addressed Elizabeth. The interrogation of suspect Richard Brown has begun. He is currently denying all charges. Elizabeth couldn't contain her anger. Despite the evidence. Despite Olivia's testimony and the photos. This is a normal response, Detective Carter explained calmly. However, the evidence is very strong. DNA testing will also be conducted. Olivia came downstairs. She seemed tense seeing the detective but sat next to Elizabeth. Dad. Richard? Olivia asked in a small voice. He's been arrested, Elizabeth took her daughter's hand. He can't hurt you anymore. Detective Carter smiled kindly at Olivia. Miss Olivia, you are very brave. It took great courage to tell the truth. Thanks to you, justice will prevail. Olivia raised her face slightly. In her eyes, a light that hadn't been seen for a long time began to return. Have you learned anything about Richard's motives from the interrogation? Elizabeth asked in a trembling voice. Detective Carter took a deep breath. It's still early, but his behavior pattern shows typical characteristics of a controller. He seems to have used his position as a stepfather to satisfy his sense of ownership and desire to control Olivia. The detective continued, also, initial interviews with a psychologist suggest that the suspect had strong jealousy toward Olivia's biological father. It's possible that as Olivia entered puberty and began to resemble her real father, it triggered him. Elizabeth couldn't stop trembling. She was beginning to understand what kind of man she had chosen and trusted. Richard's controlling attitude, excessive interference with Olivia, unnecessary criticism of her former husband, everything now appeared in a new light. What do we do now? Elizabeth said as if telling herself. As next steps, Detective Carter explained in a practical tone, I recommend applying for a protection order and starting divorce proceedings. It's also important for you and Olivia to receive professional counseling. Elizabeth looked at Olivia. About the pregnancy. Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes again. Detective Carter quietly stood up, saying, I'll step out for a moment, and left the room with Sarah. When mother and daughter were alone, Elizabeth took both of Olivia's hands. Whatever choice you make, I'm on your side. Remember that. Olivia answered through tears, I don't want to have the baby. Every day. I would remember. Elizabeth hugged her daughter tightly. I understand. I respect your choice. That night, after Olivia had fallen asleep, Elizabeth sat across from Sarah in the kitchen. I can't go back to the house, Elizabeth said quietly. Everything reminds me of Richard. You can stay here for a while, Sarah held her friend's hand. Until you take your next step. Determination shone in Elizabeth's eyes. Olivia and I need a fresh start. It will take time for her wounds to heal. But we'll get through this together. Sarah nodded. You're a strong mother, Elizabeth. There will be many difficult things ahead. The trial will be painful too. But you and Olivia will surely build a new life. On a cold February morning, Elizabeth and Olivia climbed the courthouse steps. Today was Richard Brown's final sentencing day. Ready? Elizabeth asked, holding her daughter's hand. Olivia nodded. Since that day 4 months ago, she had gradually changed. She had received professional counseling, participated in support groups, and above all, the new bond built with her mother had supported her. Inside the courtroom, all was quiet. When Richard was brought to the defendant's seat, Elizabeth saw him for the first time in months. The husband who had once been full of dignity and confidence was gone. Instead, there was a man with a haggard face and empty eyes. Richard had initially denied all charges. However, Olivia's DNA test confirmed his paternity, and the photos and messages discovered on his phone were irrefutable evidence. After the preliminary hearing, he eventually agreed to a plea deal. Still, Olivia chose to testify in court. She wanted to give courage to other children in similar situations by sharing her experience. Defendant, Richard James Brown, Judge Margaret Saunders said in a solemn voice. You have pleaded guilty to sexual abuse of a minor, possession of child pornography, and incest. The judge looked sternly at Richard. This is an extremely despicable crime that has inflicted permanent wounds on the victim's life. Your act of using your position and authority to abuse a child you should have protected deserves the harshest condemnation. A heavy silence fell over the courtroom. This court sentences you to 25 years in prison. Possibility of parole begins after 18 years. Elizabeth embraced Olivia's shoulders. Between them flowed relief and a sense that one chapter had ended. Outside the courthouse, spring sunshine greeted them. 3 weeks ago, they had left this town and moved to a small town called Cedarville, 100 miles away. Elizabeth had secured a position as a counselor at a local school, and Olivia had begun attending a new school. Mom, Olivia suddenly said. I want to speak at the support group. About my experience. Elizabeth looked at her daughter in surprise. Really? That's a very brave decision. Olivia smiled slightly. It might help someone. The counselor said silence only protects the perpetrator. Elizabeth hugged her daughter. Her heart was filled with pride and love. This past year had been hellish for them, but through that suffering, their bond had grown stronger than ever. As they got into the car, Elizabeth thought, a true family isn't about blood relations, but about relationships where people protect and respect each other. The road ahead would certainly not be smooth. But they would move forward together, one step at a time. Toward a new life.